Week 7 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few plays I looked to sell and trade this week. The first player, Rico Dowdle of the Carolina Panthers. Rico Dowdle, he's been on a tear over the last couple weeks here, putting up out of these world type of numbers for this Carolina Panther team of fantasy owners. So Chuba Hubbard, we know he's been out the last few weeks with the calf injury, and now Dowdle's come in and made the most of his opportunity in a monster way, obviously. So the last two games since he's been the starter, Week 5 versus Miami, 23 carries, 206 rush yards, a touchdown, 3 catches, 28 yards. And then Week 6 versus former team, the Cowboys, he told them to buckle up, and they didn't, and he went off with a monster game in that one. 30 carries, 183 rush yards, 4 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. So Rico Dowdle, 2 games in a row, over 200 yards from scrimmage for this Carolina Panther team. And Week 7, it is a great matchup here at the New York Jets that give up the 12th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. But like I said, he's not going to keep it up at this pace. Over 200 yards, 2 games in a row is Rico Dowdle. And also, this New York Jet team's the last easy matchup for him over the next 2 weeks. Then Week 8, he's got Buffalo in Week 9 at Green Bay, and plus as well, Chuba Hubbard, he's going to return and he's going to get worked. They didn't give him a nice contract extension last season. Towards the end of the year was his Carolina Panther team for him just to ride the pine. So I think when Chuba Hubbard returns, be a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split at best for Rico Dowdle, where he's going to get more touches, obviously. But in terms of fantasy football and keeping these numbers up, that's not going to happen, I think, for Rico Dowdle. So right now, well, his value's way up there, and Chuba Hubbard has missed the last few games, and I think he'll miss at least one more before he returns to the lineup. This is a perfect time to sell Dowdle. All numbers are going to stay at this pace for Dowdle, and Chuba Hubbard's going to return and get some work. So right now, well, he's at crazy peak value. He's a sell-high player this week. I'm not saying dump these guys for anything. Now making trades works more times than not. Next play, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. This one's pretty much capped as Alvin Kamara, and this offense isn't all that great, obviously, over there in New Orleans. I know Chris Olave, he's been decent this season. Rashid Shaheed's had a couple decent games. Juwan Johnson early in the year. But right now, Alvin Kamara, his workload's been eaten into over the last couple weeks by Kendre Miller. We know Kamara, an older running back in the league. And like I said, his numbers have really dropped off, where his ceiling's pretty much 12, 13 PPR fantasy points weekly. Week 4, Buffalo, 15 carries, 70 yards, 4 catches, 2 yards. Week 5 versus the Giants, 8 carries, 27 yards, 4 catches, 28 yards. And then Week 6 versus New England, only 10 carries, again, 31 rush yards, 5 catches, 45 yards. Obviously, he's still one of the better receiving backs in all pro football is Alvin Kamara, and that's what's pretty much saving his fantasy days. I know Week 7, it's a good matchup at the Bears. I give up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs on the season. But like I said, with Kamara, his ceiling's pretty much capped for this New Orleans Saints team. Kendre Miller, he's getting 10, 12 touches per game. And also, if he's not scoring a touchdown, he's not really going to have big numbers. He's a play I would sell off because, like I said, there's not much for Alvin Kamara to go out there and have a lot of big games in a row. Even if he does get traded to a contender, let's say, even though it's not looking likely right now, I still don't think Kamara's ceiling is that high, and he's an older back on a mediocre offense. Next sells Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's more of a sell-high candidate as Dallas Goedert. Solid production all season long it's been for him with this Philadelphia Eagle team. In the last few games, he's gone out there and put up 3 games in a row, double-digit fantasy points. Week 4 at Tampa Bay, 4 catches, 37 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 5 versus Denver, 3 catches, 19 yards, found the end zone. And then Week 6 at the Giants, 9 catches, 110 yards, a touchdown, 11 targets. In the last 3 games, he's got 4 touchdowns as Dallas Goedert. He's been a main piece in this offense, having way better season than Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown. But I just think Dallas Goedert, the numbers are going to fall off a little bit for him, even though every game he's played in this season, like I said, double-digit fantasy points. He's having a great year, no doubt about it. But coming off, obviously, a monster ball game with 26 fantasy points in PPR leagues, I would put him on the trade block and see if you could get a position of need. Obviously, with receiver injuries to Puka Nacua and Emeka Egbuka popping up, maybe you need a wide out. You try to sell off Goddard in that deal. Or maybe you need a running back, obviously, with all these injuries over the last few weeks. So if you could trade Dallas Goedert at tight end, which obviously he's having a monster season, but if you could get a position of need more where you could find another tight end on the waiver wire or making a smaller trade, this would be the time to sell Goddard after coming off a monster game. Next play is his teammate Devonta Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Devonta Smith, he's a deep ball threat and nothing for the most part. I think, for this Philadelphia Eagle team. And him and A.J. Brown are really frustrated with the targets this season they're not getting and the production they're not getting. And this Eagle team now losing 2 games in a row, losing to the Broncos in Week 5, and then the New York Giants on Thursday Night Football went out there and blew them out in that ball game. So Devonta Smith, he's had a couple of decent games here and there this season, but another player with the ceiling cap, where obviously this is a run-first team with Saquon Barkley, and obviously Jalen Hurts runs the football a lot, and Goddard's having a big year. Week 4, Tampa Bay, 2 catches, 29 yards. Week 5 versus Denver, 8 catches, 114 yards, 10 targets. And then Week 6 at the Giants, 4 catches, 49 yards on 5 targets. So like I said, Devonta Smith, targets really haven't been there in this Eagle offense. They're running the football more over the last couple seasons, and if he's not catching that big deep ball, is Devonta Smith, his numbers all season long, besides 2 big games out of 6, he's pretty much been a non-existent wide receiver 4 for fantasy owners. So right now, like I said, I don't see it getting much better for Devonta Smith in this offense, and he's a player I would sell this week. I know the value isn't high for Devonta Smith, but someone who I just don't think the ceiling's going to be there all season long, and I'll have a couple pop games here and there, but nothing consistent. Next play, Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. So Jameson Williams, after 3 weeks in a row, he failed to reach double-digit fantasy points. Week 6, he went out there and had a good ball game at the Chiefs. 6 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown on 7 targets. So Week 7, another matchup where I think they're going to put points on the board is Detroit versus Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football, where this could be a high-scoring game between these two teams with 2 arguably the best offenses in the league going at it. But Jameson Williams, he's more of a deep ball threat than nothing we've seen throughout his career. This season, only 2 games out of 6 double-digit fantasy points. And like I said, this offense is Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta, in my opinion, are ahead of him in the pecking order in terms of getting targets and making plays. So coming off his best game of the season, arguably, this or Week 2 for Jameson Williams, he's a sell-high candidate because every few weeks he'll have a pop game here and there, but just like Devonta Smith, he's a player that's a pretty much boom or bust type of wideout. So after coming off a solid performance, he's a sell high this week. The next player, Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Giants. I know he's going to operate him and Darius Slayton most likely is the top 2 options in this offense for New York in the passing game, and Theo Johnson having a couple good games here and there. But Wan'Dale came off one of the better games of his NFL career in the victory versus the Philadelphia Eagles. He had 6 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. But I think this Giant offense, it's going to be Jackson Dart running the football 9-10 times per game. Cam Scatterbo, he's been a monster rookie running back this season. He's going to get his workload, obviously, 23 touches per game as well for Scatterbo, and Tracy mixed in at times. And I just think they're going to limit this passing game, obviously. And now with a couple tough matchups coming up at Denver in Week 7 and at Philadelphia. I know he had the big game versus them in Week 6, but they should be a little bit healthier. And pretty much Wan'Dale Robinson's big game. He slipped loose on the sidelines on a 37-yard touchdown. So if he didn't score a touchdown on that one, it would have been a mediocre game for Wan'Dale Robinson. So I know he could go out there and make plays, but he's more of an underneath route runner and possession receiver more than a big play and obviously game-breaking type of wide receiver. So coming off a big game, and yes, he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver, him or Slayton, the remainder of the season if Slayton returns healthy for this Giant team. He's a player I would sell off this week, and the final player, Jacoby Myers of the Vegas Raiders. So Jacoby Myers, a lot of people thought this season could be a big year for him with a better quarterback at Geno Smith after having a nice season with Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew last season. And obviously with Brock Bowers not 100% and Bowers missing the last 2 games, you thought Myers would go out there and put up numbers. But I think Jacoby Myers, he's just a player that don't want to be in Vegas, obviously requesting a trade before the season, and production really hasn't been there. He's failed to reach double-digit fantasy points since Week 2. So right now, while production hasn't been there, and Trey Tucker, in my opinion, is ahead of him in the pecking order and a favorite target of Geno Smith, I would just sell him off and see if I could get a decent running back bench piece in a deal for Myers, or even a receiver. Week 4 versus the Bears, 4 catches, 30 yards. Week 5 in Indianapolis, 4 catches, 32 yards. And Week 6 in a slam dunk matchup versus Tennessee, it was a nothing game again, 4 catches, 39 yards. So the targets haven't been there for Myers. He really doesn't want to be over there in Vegas. You can tell by the body language and the route running. And you would thought with that Bowers out, like I said, he will put up numbers, but obviously that hasn't been the case. So he's a wide receiver I would just dump off at this point and see if I could get anything in decency. So that's a few players I look to sell and trade for week 7 of the fantasy football season.